Happy Father's Day. Today, we are going to start a new series, and we're going to look at Ecclesiastes. And Ecclesiastes can sometimes get a bad reputation. When my mom asked me last week, what are you going to talk about? This is the exact thing she did with her face. She went, ooh, and she made that sound. Because people kind of feel like Ecclesiastes is a little bit of a bummer, and maybe it's kind of depressing, and we would be better off if we could just skip to something that feels encouraging and light, because life is already hard. So people have these perceptions. If you're familiar with Winnie the Pooh characters, Ecclesiastes is kind of like the Eeyore. It's like, it just feels like, did someone make a mistake when they put this in here, when they put this in the Bible? Like, did they proofread this? Why is this here? And here are some popular memes. These are like internet jokes about Ecclesiastes, that all we're going to hear is that life doesn't matter and there's nothing for us, so why even try? But when we dig into some of the really uncomfortable parts of Scripture, and when we dig into things that maybe seem really uncomfortable for us to process and ponder, and we have to ask ourselves really hard questions, like the teacher in Ecclesiastes does, then we actually find out that life is really beautiful, and it has an incredible meaning. But we have to be willing to go on a really uncomfortable journey for us to get to the place where we appreciate it, for us to get to the place where we can enjoy it in the way that God designed us to enjoy it. So we're going to ask some pretty big questions today. And the answer to these might seem obvious, but when we really ask ourselves and we're really honest with ourselves, then we kind of reveal some things and some expectations that we have. So the questions are, what are my expectations from this life? What do I believe that following God means, my life with God? And what do I believe that maybe I am owed, or some expectations of what will happen because I have a life with God? Now, Ecclesiastes was probably written in the late Persian period or before that. So this is hundreds of years before Jesus was born. So we have a relationship with Jesus. We understand that Jesus is the fulfillment, the ultimate sacrifice of all the sacrifices we see in the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament. So the author of Ecclesiastes has a relationship with God, knows God, understands grace and faith, but we understand it differently because we have Jesus. We're on the other side of Jesus' death and resurrection and fulfillment as the ultimate sacrifice. But we're still asking these same questions, the author of Ecclesiastes and us today. Do I have expectations that my life with Jesus will bring me certain promises or make sure that I avoid certain pains in life? And so we might hear that question and say, no, I don't really have expectations, or I know the right answer that I'm supposed to say is, no, I don't have expectations. But when we're faced with pain and suffering and loss, often we find we did have some expectations that maybe God would protect us from those things, or we would always have food on our table or a roof over our head, or our physical needs will be met through our health, maybe that our children or loved ones won't experience these horrible pains in life. And to wrestle with these questions is very uncomfortable. But we have to go on the uncomfortable journey to see the whole perspective. And the teacher in Ecclesiastes will help us see that to submit our lives to Jesus as our King, in his case, to follow God, it's not about us getting what we want, and it's not a vending machine kind of relationship. It's not that I can say, okay, God, I showed up, I did all the things, I said all the prayers, so now you give me what I want in return. He's going to show us that's not how life works, not life with God. And when you try to find purpose and meaning outside of God, outside of your relationship with him, then it's going to come up short. You will always be disappointed. That's not the way that life works. Ecclesiastes is a very unique book in Scripture. So there's nothing else like it in the Old or New Testament because it's one man's perspective. He's looking back over his life, and he's sharing some really vulnerable, open, and honest experiences that he's had. He's kind of saying, look, I experimented with all these things in life. Can these things bring me purpose outside from God? And he found no, and he's going to share that whole entire process with us. Here's a little bit of background. You're going to learn 2 Hebrew words today. So if you came to church and you were like, I hope some random lady teaches me 2 Hebrew vocabulary words, then I have you covered. The first one is going to be this word. This word is koheleth. Koheleth. And this is the Hebrew word that means the one who gathers or assembles people for teaching. So probably in your Bibles, if you open up to Ecclesiastes, it will say the teacher or the preacher. But in Hebrew, it's a little bit more. We're gathering people around us for teaching or to share some wisdom. And that's actually how we get the name of the book, Ecclesiastes. That's not a word that we say very often, but that's how we get it, because in Greek, gathering or assembly, the word for that is ecclesia. So that's how we get Ecclesiastes. But it makes us think this wise old sage, kind of this grandpa figure, he's gathering us in. He says, sit on my porch, and I'm going to share this wisdom with you about my life. The author of Ecclesiastes is actually going to be different than the teacher. We're going to see they're 2 distinct different figures. So the author is going to come in Ecclesiastes 1:1, you'll see. And he's kind of like introducing the speaker at an event, like the MC. Like, ladies and gentlemen, I'm introducing you to the teacher, and he will come up and share. So most of Ecclesiastes is the words and ideas of the teacher. And then the author will come back in at the end. We'll see him again in chapter 12, and he will give us the final perspective, his final thoughts. He'll kind of close with the application. That's a good thing, because the teacher in Ecclesiastes is very blunt and very oftentimes disturbing, the things that he says, and maybe even a little bit hopeless. So the author will come back and give us the final perspective and to consider the words of the teacher with a lot of humility. So we'll hear from both the author and the teacher today. If you read Ecclesiastes 1:1, this introduction to the teacher, you'll see that it says, the words of the teacher, son of David, king in Jerusalem. So who is actually talking to us here? The tradition is that the teacher is Solomon, so King Solomon, son of King David. There's some different reasons why people disagree with that or have other ideas. But when we look at the life of King Solomon, you can read about his life in 1 Kings and 2 Chronicles, then we see that there's the persona we read about the teacher here kind of fits his persona. A guy who's pursuing endless wealth and pleasure, has a harem of wives. That fits the Solomon perspective. Solomon, as we know from that narrative of his life, spent most of his life rejecting God, and he married hundreds of foreign women who worshipped idols. And so he introduced idol worship into the kingdom of ancient Israel. So it doesn't necessarily fit the bill that he would say, let me look back on this all with wisdom. Totally possible. Next week we'll have some notes for you, and those notes will have a lot more details and some kind of nerdy background if you want to dig into this a little bit more. But it's important to know that the narrative style, or the writing style, I should say, is critical and skeptical. The teacher is going to be a really big skeptic. He's not skeptical that God exists, but he's asking, what does life matter apart from God? If all I had, if I'm being totally honest, if I'm lucky, maybe I have 85, 90 years on this planet, if that's all I have, then what matters? What is actually something of substance in this life? Can the things that I believe will give me meaning actually provide that purpose that I'm searching for? So let's jump into verse 2 of Ecclesiastes. Meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher, utterly meaningless, everything is meaningless. I know that everyone is super stoked after I just read that. He's very blunt. He's very honest. Here's the teacher saying, everything that I can see has no meaning. But here's where we're going to learn our second Hebrew word today. So the first was koheleth, the teacher. The second Hebrew word you're going to learn today is hevel. This word hevel is the word that's translated in your Bibles as meaningless or vanity. That's what most English translation translate the word hevel into. And there's a lot of reasons why Bible translation committees decide to translate words. Vanity is from the King James Version, so Old English 400 years ago. Languages kind of change. But when we think of meaningless, or when we think of vanity, especially vanity, we kind of think self-obsession or obsession with beauty, or meaningless as in like what matters? Why do I need to care about this? But in Hebrew, this word, the literal translation of this word, means smoke or vapor. So hevel means smoke or vapor. So if I lit a match right now and I blew it out, you would see the smoke. And smoke is a real substance. It's not obsessed with itself in that sense of vanity, but it's gone in an instant. I can try to grab it, but if I open my hand, it's gone. I can't control it. I can't freeze it. I can't make it do what I want. Smoke is kind of itself this mystery. It's kind of an enigma, especially if you're an ancient person and you don't know thermodynamics or molecules. I light this match, I blow the smoke, and it's gone. I can't do anything about it. I can't control it or change it. And so the use of this word, hevel, is kind of a metaphor itself. Smoke and vapor is uncontrollable. It can't be captured. It's real, but you can't force it to do what you want. And that's what a lot of what we find in life is. When we try to find meaning and purpose apart from God, when we try to control our career or the acquisition of wealth or finding pleasure, then what we find is ultimately we can't control the world. We're not meant to, and those things don't provide us with the value that we're looking for. You'll look and see in your Old Testament Hebrew Bible that this word hevel is often used to describe idols, idol worship, people who are putting their hope and trust in idols. And it's really interesting that they use this word because it's not that idol worship is meaningless. If it was meaningless, it wouldn't be a problem. Idol worship is a really big problem. If you're giving your allegiance to something other than to God, that has a lot of meaning. But the authors of Scripture are so smart with the way that they use their words. They're saying, go ahead and try. You can try to get something you want out of an idol, but it will never satisfy you and never give your life meaning. And often in Ecclesiastes, we hear the teacher use a simile, and that simile is all these things are like chasing after the wind. You can chase the wind all you want all day long, but you'll never catch it, and it will make you exhausted and defeated and feel so discouraged if you try. And so especially with idol worship in the ancient world, idol worship was not like a personal relationship or admiration or love for an idol. It was a vending machine relationship. It was like, I will take this little statue and I'll honor it with gifts and I'll carry it around and I'll feed it and do all the things. And then the expectation is this god or goddess in return will make sure my crops are plentiful and my harvest is good, or that I have safe sailing on the sea, or that safe childbirth. It's a vending machine kind of relationship. And so the point is, that's not how it works. You can try and manipulate an idol into getting what you want, but that's not how the world operates, and you can't get any meaning from them. So let's jump back in to verse 2. Vapor, says the teacher, vapor of vapors, everything is a vapor. This is a graphic from the Bible Project. They have a great series on Ecclesiastes, and it shows that the teacher is going to go through and basically deconstruct, take apart all the things that the world tells him will give him purpose apart from God. And so we're asking these questions. Can money, wealth, pleasure, knowledge, status, any of these things bring me the value I'm looking for? Verse 3 through 5, what do people gain from all their labors at which they toil under the sun? Generations come and generations go, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun sets and hurries back to where it rises. He uses a lot of poetic language and kind of like these riddles, almost like you hear Jesus use in the gospel. He observes nature, and he doesn't really always give you the answer, but asks a lot of questions and observes a lot of things. In the next verses, he looks at the wind. It blows round and round, and there's streams that flow into the sea, but the sea is never full. And to the place where they come from, they're going to go back again, right? We know that that's how the water cycle works. It rains, the streams fill up the ocean, it evaporates, clouds, and we start all over again. That's how the world works. There's these cycles that are happening all around us all the time. The eye never has enough of seeing, nor the ear its fill of hearing. What has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun. Under the sun is a phrase we're going to hear him say over and over in Ecclesiastes. Is there anything of which one can say, look, this is something new? It was here already long ago. It was here before our time. And here is where he gets pretty blunt. No one remembers the former generations, and even those yet to come will not be remembered by those who follow them. That's kind of a lot to process. The teacher is using this contrast between nature and humankind to observe how the world operates. Oops. And so he's looking at the oceans, the mountains. He's saying, one day we're going to be gone, but guess what? They're going to be here. They were here before we got here. They're going to be here long after we go. And in a few generations, we're going to be forgotten. We can probably remember, obviously, our grandparents, maybe our great-grandparents, but our great-great-grandparents, do we even know their names? And generations back, on, we don't know them. We probably don't know their first and last name or the life that they lived. If we're lucky, even the most formidable, biggest people in history, like think of Alexander the Great or Cleopatra or Caesar Augustus. I mean, the biggest, baddest people in history, we remember them in a textbook. That's best case scenario, that we get written on a page, and then a couple times in someone's life, maybe they read about us. And he also looks at just human accomplishments. Everything that we create will be useful for a generation. We have some good advancements in technology and medicine, but those things become outdated. Someone will come and improve them and make them better, and the brightest minds of our generation will be a memory. Think about like medicine. If we looked at how the medical community operated 200 years ago, we would say, you guys are out of your minds, because they didn't have the knowledge and technology that we have now. But in their day, they were huge improvements and advancements. And in generations to come, people will look back at us and say, can you believe that they thought those things? And nothing is really new at the end of the day. Nothing is really a new idea in the sense that oftentimes we're just improving on other people's inventions that they've already created. Like think of movies. We started out with a projector, and then you had a VHS player, and then a DVD player, and then a Blu-ray player, and then now we watch Netflix. We push a button, and through the internet, we watch a movie on the TV. And it's really not a brand new idea. We're just improving on what somebody has already created. We're improving on technology that somebody else made. Let's jump back into verse 12. I, the teacher, was king over Israel in Jerusalem. I applied my mind to study and to explore by wisdom all that is done under the heavens. What a heavy burden God has laid on mankind. I have seen all the things that are done under the sun. All of them are a vapor, a chasing after the wind. And then he makes some more observations just about how life is not ideal. What is crooked cannot be straightened. What is lacking cannot be counted. I said to myself, look, I have increased in wisdom more than anyone who has ruled over Jerusalem before me. I have experienced much of wisdom and knowledge. This is one of the places where we say, did Solomon write this? Because if you know your kings in ancient Israel, Saul wasn't king over Jerusalem. David established the kingdom of Israel in Jerusalem. And so really, the only king before Solomon would be David. So he's kind of saying, like, if this was him, he would be saying, of all the people before me, of my dad before me, I have experienced much wisdom and knowledge. So that's where we have a question like, was this him? Was it not? Your notes will have more about that next week. But he's going to talk about the wealth that he's amassed, the wisdom that he had everything. He said, I applied myself to the understanding of wisdom and also of madness and folly, but what I learned is that this too is chasing after the wind. For with much wisdom comes much sorrow. The more knowledge, the more grief. So if accomplishments and a long life cannot bring me purpose, well, let's go to the next thing. What about pleasure? What if I just go for anything and everything that I desire? Because if this doesn't matter, well, I might as well be happy. So this is his next experiment. So he's going to tell us about the things that he looked at and tried to give him that purpose. So this is chapter 2, verse 1 through 2. I said to myself, come now, I will test you with pleasure to find out what is good. But that also proved to be a vapor, Laughter, I said, is madness. And what does pleasure accomplish? So here he details the things that he really dove into, that people said, hey, this should bring you happiness and meaning in life. So he tried cheering himself with wine. He said he still had his wisdom. So he has a lot of, we're going to see material possessions and ways to feed himself and give himself things that people in his world would consider things of a wealthy person. So he planted vineyards, he built houses, gardens, parks. He had a reservoir to water all of these gardens and vineyards. He bought male and female slaves. He had other slaves in his house. He had herds and flocks. So that is money right there, because it's clothing, it's material, it's food, it's a business. So he's raking in the dough from this and also has material things that he can enjoy. He also had treasure. He says he amassed silver and gold, the treasure of kings and provinces. I acquired male and female singers, so now he has entertainment, and a harem as well, the delights of a man's heart. I became greater by far than anyone in Jerusalem before me. In all this, my wisdom stayed with me. So he had everything. And then he says, I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. I refused my heart no pleasure. My heart took delight in all my labor, and this was the reward for all my toil. Yet, when I had surveyed all that my hands had done, what I had toiled to achieve, everything was a vapor, a chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained under the sun. So now we're on to the next experiment. Wealth and pleasure don't bring me any kind of meaning. Pursuing anything and everything I want, as we see in Solomon's life, whether this was Solomon or not, it's a Solomon-like figure who's speaking to us. In his life, we see that did not bring him purpose. And to pursue his own pleasure and desire above what God says is good and aligning his heart with God's heart brought a lot of destruction and pain for the community around him and in his own life. So we could spend our life, we could spend a career trying to make as much money as we can, getting as much wealth as we can so we can have experiences like fly in a private jet and go on a yacht and party and have maybe designer clothes and jewelry and the most incredible meals and experiences in this life. That's a big part of our culture. There's this whole generation of us who follow influencers on the internet, and that's what they do. They try to have the best experiences and show other people, this is how great my life is. Look at all these amazing things that I'm doing. And you can try to do that to give yourself purpose. But the thing about these things is that Monday always comes, as Dr. Tim Mackey says. So you can go party all day and all night, but parties have to end, and your friends have to go home, and you're going to get the bill in the mail, and you're going to have to pay your taxes. Your friends are going to leave. And a life in pursuit of pleasure can't sustain meaning because pleasure does not provide us with meaning. And we see from the rest of Scripture that actually if we think that to be free means that we just pursue everything and anything we want, it will actually enslave us to our own sin and our own desires. So that's not the key. So let's see if we just pursue wisdom. We know from the other books of wisdom literature that wisdom is a really important part of life. You know, Proverbs, Job, Song of Songs, these all teach us about wisdom. So is wisdom the key for purpose? And is it the key that somehow I can escape the things in this life that are hard and difficult if I gain wisdom? So verse 12 in chapter 2, I turned my thoughts to consider wisdom and also madness and folly. What more can a king's successor do what has already been done? I saw that wisdom is better than folly, just as light is better than darkness. The wise have eyes in their heads, while the fools walk in darkness. But I came to realize that the same fate overtakes them both. Then I said to myself, the fate of the fool will overtake me also. Remember, he said, I had all this wisdom. So what then do I gain by being wise? I said to myself, this too is a vapor. For the wise, like the fool, will not be long remembered. The days have already come when both have been forgotten. Like the fool, the wise too must die. Now he's going to start kind of processing and struggling through this, what he's just learned, because he had these expectations that being wise, that having wealth, that pursuing pleasure would give his life the value that he wanted. And now he's realizing that that's not true, and what I thought I was standing on that was firm ground is not actually that firm. And so there are these expectations I had that are being wildly unmet. What does that mean for my life? We also have to understand he does not say that wisdom doesn't matter. Wisdom is meaningless. Don't even try. He says there's a difference between the wise and the fool. The wise are like people who can see. They have a different perspective on life that's needed, where the people who are fools, they walk around like they're in a dark room. They can't see, they can't navigate life well. So it matters, but at the end of the day, our great-great-grandkids aren't going to remember our names. At the end of the day, we're all the same. So the teacher's going to struggle through this. This is verse 17 through 18. So I hated life because the work that is done under the sun was grievous to me. All of it is a vapor, a chasing after the wind. I hated all the things I had toiled for under the sun because I must leave them to the one who comes after me. And who knows whether the person will be wise or foolish? He's going to keep observing that. Wait a minute, I worked my whole life. I struggled, I toiled. Work is hard. Work is something that takes a toll on your physical body, mentally, emotionally. It can take time away from your family, from other aspects of your life. And he thought that this was the key. And then he got there and realized, wait a minute, best case scenario in my life, I'll have an heir to leave all my wealth to, and then I'm going to die. And who knows if the heir that I give my wealth to is actually going to take care of the things that I've given them. And so he really struggles with this and pores over it and looks at it and says, what do I really have out of all of these accomplishments, all of my life work that I've done? Verse 21 through 22, for a person may labor with wisdom, knowledge, and skill, and then they must leave all they own to another who has not toiled for it. This too is a vapor and a great misfortune. What do people get for all the toil and anxious striving with which they labor under the sun? All their days, their work is grief and pain. Even at night, their minds do not rest. My husband is a contractor, and he often dreams about work. Luckily, he has a very healthy relationship with work, but still, he dreams about work, and he'll wake up and be like, oh my gosh, I just spent all night working, and now I have to go to work again. It takes a toll on you. Work is not something that provides you with an escape from all the problems of life. Often, it brings a lot of problems to our lives. He says, this too is a vapor. A person can do nothing better than to eat and drink and find satisfaction in their own toil. This too I see is from the hand of God, for without him, who can eat or find enjoyment? No matter how hard we work or how much wealth we acquire, we're going to die. That's a part of the bluntness of the teacher. Verse 26 through 27, to the person who pleases him, God gives wisdom, knowledge, and happiness. But to the sinner, he gives the task of gathering and storing up wealth to hand it over to the one who pleases God. This, too, is a vapor, a chasing after the wind. This is a lot for us to process, especially sometimes we think these things don't matter to me. I don't really care. I don't have stock in these things. But again, when we're faced with the reality of them, or if they're taken away, or if they're questioned, or if someone maybe is demeaning towards the work that we've done, or considered as it not as important as we do, we realize, actually, this was really, really important to me. Maybe it's wealth, maybe it's work, but the point is that there's no guarantees in life for good outcomes, or even good outcomes when we're gone, no matter how much we work and prepare. We can't control the world, and we really can't control it, especially after we've gone. And the teacher here is not saying that laughing, pleasure, good food, or working for a stable future for your family is wrong. It's not bad, it's not sinful, it's not wrong. But if you think that it's the magic key that will guarantee some specific outcome in your life, or that you are owed that from a relationship with God, or that you will gain some kind of purpose apart from God in these things, then you're sorely mistaken. These things are like chasing after the wind. You can try, but sometimes when you try and chase the wind, you're missing out on all the good things around you because you're distracted with this task that will never fulfill you. You can't catch the wind. You can try forever. You'll never catch it. So when you're focused on catching the wind, then you're missing all of the good things in your life around you because you're preoccupied with a task that is not accomplishable. Now we're going to move into chapter 3. So this is a passage you might be familiar with. It's often read at funerals. We often read it because it talks about how life, again, works in cycles. And there are cycles about, sometimes there's times for enjoying life. Sometimes there are very difficult things in life. People die, people are born. And so we'll see that in the next couple of verses. There is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. A time to be born and to die, to plant and to uproot, to kill and to heal. A time to tear down and to build, to weep and to laugh, to mourn and to dance. Verses 5 through 8. A time to scatter stones and a time to gather them, to embrace and to refrain from embracing, to search and to give up, to keep and throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. We have no control over time. Now, we can choose when we enjoy something, or, we have some control over these different cycles and seasons, but ultimately, we can't make the good times stick around forever. We can't capture those moments and then just sustain them in time. And if you've ever met somebody who really struggles with living in the appropriate time, you'll understand this. So maybe someone you went to high school or college with, maybe they're a middle-aged person or even older, and they live like they're still in high school. They're living in the glory days of when they were a teenager, but they're not a teenager anymore. And they have responsibilities, and they have jobs, and there's things and phases of life that have ended, and it's time to move on to the next phases of life. But they're living in the past. And we understand they would probably be a lot happier and have a lot more out of life if they could move forward to the appropriate stage that they're supposed to be in. But they're stuck in the past, and we have to acknowledge that our finite nature and lack of control are a real thing. We have to embrace that in order to embrace the good things in front of us. Because those people miss out on the positive experiences that we have of maybe having a job or friends that are not stuck in the past either, that are embracing their stage of life, or a family, or things that come with a career as you develop over time. This is verse 9 through 11. What do workers gain from their toil? I have seen the burden God has laid on the human race. He has made everything beautiful in its time. He has also set eternity in the human heart, yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. We have this longing in us for eternity with God. We know that we need God, our Creator, and yet there are still mysteries in our faith. There are things that we can't understand. He's posing these two contrasts. Now, some people have looked at the first part, this kind of poem about a time and a season for everything, and they've proposed maybe it's a contrast between good and bad things, right? Sometimes life is good, sometimes life is bad, and you can't really control when it happens. But if you look at some of the things that the teacher was struggling with, we're looking at, a time to keep and a time to throw away, to tear and mend, to uproot and to plant. It kind of depends on your perspective, because uprooting sometimes is really painful, or tearing something down, that can be something that's very difficult and very negative. But sometimes it's a positive experience. It brings something new and something good. So when you look at these different seasons of life with a perspective of wisdom, which he's going to share with us, then it's not that necessarily all of these are bad, or that we always are waiting for the next bad thing to happen. It's just that when we have a perspective on life that God gives us of wisdom, we can appreciate these seasons. And even when they are painful and difficult, we understand it's not just for nothing. Verse 12 through 15. I know there is nothing better for people than to be happy and to do good while they live, that each of them may eat and drink and find satisfaction in all of their toil. This is a gift from God. I know that everything God does will endure forever. Nothing can be added to it and nothing taken away from it. God does it so people will fear him. Now, we're going to close with chapter 3 today, but the teacher is going to start to make some observations about injustice. There's wicked people and there's righteous people in the world. God's going to judge us all. But what he's going to find is that just like wise people and foolish people, wicked people and righteous people, we have the same fate at the end of the day. We're all going to the same place in that we're all going to the grave. We're not eternal. We're finite, we're small, we're limited, and so there are some things that are not going to change that. He says, I saw something else under the sun. In the place of judgment, wickedness was there. In the place of justice, wickedness was there. I said to myself, God will bring into judgment both the righteous and the wicked, for there will be a time for every activity, a time to judge every deed. And I said to myself, as for humans, God tests them so that they may see that they are like the animals. Surely, the fate of human beings is like that of the animals. The same fate awaits us both. As one dies, so dies the other. All have the same breath. Humans have no advantage over animals. Everything is a vapor. So if you thought maybe because we have authority over creation, hey, at least I'm a person, I can think, I can move, I have, maybe you're a farmer or you live here in Laverca in a farming community, we understand that we get things from animals, we should respect them and care for them, but they provide for us. So that kind of can make us feel a little superior at the end of the day, as in we think that we have control that we don't have, or that we are living on top of the world and no one can ever take us down. And he says, well, we're actually all going to die. And this is a verse that often we quote at Lent before Easter. All go to the same place. All come from dust, and all to dust return. And then he contemplates these different aspects of Hebrew theology, like there's this concept of Sheol, the realm of the dead, and where people go when they die. And so he's asking, do people, do animals, do we all go to the same place? He's asking a lot of big questions here. God made us from the earth. That's where we're all going in death. This is verse 22. So I saw that there is nothing better for a person than to enjoy their work, because that is their lot. For who can bring them to see what will happen after them? This is really similar to the way that he ended chapter 2, 24 and 25. A person can do nothing better than to eat and drink and find satisfaction in their own toil. This, too, I see is from the hand of God. For without him, who can eat or find enjoyment? So this makes us ask, okay, this feels like a little bit of whiplash. Which is it? Is everything a vapor in the wind, or is life meaningful and we should enjoy it? Because he's posed both to us. And the answer is yes. It's kind of both. Because we are not just jumping around and picking out the good verses and saying, okay, this one makes me feel happy, this one makes me feel good. We're going on this journey with him. And so we see that this isn't just we're getting whiplash and he's just kind of psyching us out. We're seeing that he's going on a whole journey to gain the right perspective. And so he thought something about life, and he's realizing it's a lot different than he expected. Life is not without meaning, but when I understand it in the way that I'm supposed to, it humbles me in a way that I'm supposed to be humbled. And I am such a limited and finite being. But my limitations of understanding don't determine if life is meaningful. In other words, I can't understand everything. I can't understand what God understands. His ways are above my ways. So I don't understand the mysteries of this world, the enigma of how life is like a vapor in the wind. It's like smoke. I can't catch it. I can't control it. But just because I had expectations that aren't being met doesn't mean that life doesn't have meaning. It just means I don't understand what it is. And even to have that knowledge, to have that understanding, introduces wisdom to our life to appreciate it even more. And this makes us ask those big questions that we asked in the beginning. What do we think life with God actually means? Is prayer something where I get what I want from a magic genie? I ask for something and it appears before me? Or what do I think it means that God loves me and cares for me? Does that mean all of my wishes and desires always come true? I get everything I want. I'm successful. Or that when there's bad in life and loss and things that are very painful for me to grasp, that somehow I'll have a magic escape from all of this. Or what about these questions like, Why do the wicked have all of these wonderful things and righteous people are suffering, they're lacking? And a lot of people step away from their faith when they ask these questions because they realize that their expectations were in something completely different than what we find in Jesus. And they say, I tried this thing with Jesus, and my life was still hard. Actually, maybe it was even harder. It was a really big struggle, and I didn't come out on the other side problem-free. And the teacher is inviting us to look at these big questions in life, like why is there suffering? Why don't I always succeed? Why are wicked people thriving? And look at our expectations of God. This is a quote from Tim Mackey. I really love this quote. He says, the book of Ecclesiastes is going to raise the possibility of what if God is not the problem? What if my expectations are the problem? What if what I thought I was signing up for is actually some version of the myth of religious fulfillment? That being with Jesus means I'm fulfilled in these ways, and when I'm not, then Jesus must be failing me. He says, what if God's promise to me is actually not to solve all of my problems? What if that was never his promise to me? What if his promise to me was actually not that my life may go better and all of my dreams come true? What if his promise to me, that's later revealed in the cross, is that God actually enters into the hevel, remember that means smoke or vapor, the hevel of human existence and takes it onto himself in the cross? We are small and we're very finite. Our lives move very quickly on this earth, and we're fragile. Mentally, emotionally, physically. We're not Superman. We're not undefeatable. And we live in a world that breaks things, that's very fragile. But that's not what Ecclesiastes is about. It's not give up and go home, who cares, party all day, night and long, because, tomorrow we're all going to die. That's not the end. The God of the universe, as the teacher finds, gives my life incredible meaning, but I have to shift my perspective to be able to respect it and understand it. And the meaning in my life is not that I gain prosperity and I get all that I want and everything's perfect. It's that I am not the most important person on this earth. I'm not that important at all. And I'm not going to have some legacy that transcends all time. I'm a person. And I'm not meant to sustain the world. I didn't create it. I don't keep it turning. When I die, it's going to keep on turning over and over again. But my purpose comes from God and this life with him. And that purpose and that meaning will remain regardless if I have wealth, money, pleasure, or all of these good things that I want to have. And if I put my meaning or my value in anything but God, it will crumble and it will leave me very, very disappointed like the teacher was. But the wise perspective helps me to understand that life is short. It's uncontrollable. It's like a vapor. It's like smoke. I can't grab it, and I can't control it. And I will exhaust my short life if I try to chase after the wind. So I have to embrace that life is an enigma. It's a mystery. It's a paradox. There are good things, and sometimes there are not good things. And so while I have good gifts in my life, I have to steward them well. I have to appreciate them. They were made for me to enjoy. So I have to be a good steward of all of those gifts and use them wisely while I have them, because I probably won't have them forever. And also the teacher, in his closing statements in chapter 2 and 3, he says, every good thing that I have is from God. So all of these experiences that he mentions, like he talks about having a meal or enjoying your friends, your spouse, the people in your life, my ability to even enjoy those things is from God. That's the only way that I can experience these good things. And even those remind me that I'm small. I have to eat in order to survive. I have to drink water. I need people in order to be a healthy person. It reminds us of our finite nature of humanity. And when I try to control life and find meaning apart from God, when I obsess over my career and gaining more money or maintaining something that's impossible to keep forever, I will miss out on all those wonderful, beautiful gifts, like eating a good meal or enjoying the beauty of nature or the people that I love the most. And some people might look at that lack of control and view it as imprisonment and make you feel really scared or upset or frustrated. And it might feel like a loss to you. But what we find out through Ecclesiastes is that it's actually freedom. It's freedom to enjoy this life. It's freedom to create and to do good things that God has prepared us to do. But I'm not the sustainer and controller of the whole universe. I can't be, and I'm not meant to be. It's not apathy. It's not like you're a worm and your life is pointless, why even try? It's that life is so meaningful and so beautiful, but I'm not the reason that it's meaningful and beautiful. God is. Without God, we could say, eat, drink, and be merry. Tomorrow you're going to die. Who cares? But with God, it's whether or not you get the things you want, your life matters. And that's not easy for all of us to sit with. Maybe for some people, you're like, I have been wrestling with this. I've been struggling. It seems like I'm scared even to bring it up to other people because maybe they don't want to confront these really difficult questions in life. Or maybe you feel like, this is not what I prepared for today. I didn't really want to dig into these questions because they're really hard for us to wrestle with. And there's a lot of people that step away from their faith, and it's not something that we should look down our noses at them with judgment, but to walk through it with them and lead them back to the God who gives us purpose and meaning in our life. And so it's really important as a church community when we wrestle through these things together that we do it with grace and humility, and we let other people ask some hard questions, and we sit with them in that discomfort. And we're really honest with other people when we're struggling and asking these big questions, because we're meant to do this in community with each other. And church is not a place we go. It's us. It's the people. It's people of God who decide to be family with each other. So as you process and meditate more on this, and I really encourage you to go back and go through and process and really spend time on the words of the teacher, because we've just moved through it so quickly. But it's really important we do that with each other. And with God, we don't just have life for a few years under the sun. That's not the last page of the book. It's not the end of the story. When we choose to follow Jesus, when we're reconciled with God, we have hope for this life and for the next life. We can bring the goodness of God to the most broken places in our world and bring hope to hopelessness and light into darkness. And what is the hope? The hope we're sharing is not good things are coming for you. It's a perfect life. You're going to be happy and healthy and wealthy. But it's that no matter what happens in this life, you have hope in the work of Jesus, that his life and death and resurrection conquered sin and death. And one day, he's going to destroy all injustice and pain, ultimately forever, once and for all. That's what we're looking forward to. And sometimes for us, it's easy. You know, we live in America. We have a very wonderful, beautiful life here. A lot of us do. A lot of us have food on the table and a roof over our heads, and that's a wonderful gift. We have brothers and sisters in the faith all around the world who are experiencing war and pain and loss and just the most awful atrocities a human can experience. And so for them, we're not promising everything's going to turn out fine for you. It's that your hope is not here. Your hope is in eternity with Jesus. And he will destroy all of the pain and injustice of this world. And we're waiting for him to create the new creation where we will spend eternity with God and Jesus. And for those who don't know that truth or have that hope, we have purpose in bringing the light of Jesus to their darkness. So next week, we'll pick back up and we'll move through Ecclesiastes and see what the teacher tells us and how the author comes back in and gives us a final perspective and closes his thoughts. I always like to close with a poem or some kind of prayer that someone in our faith has written before us. So this is a poem by T.M. Moore on Ecclesiastes. It says, "What did I learn? From all his work a man gains nothing. I have seen the labor every man in turn is given from the hand of God, that he may fill his passing days and realize some meaning. God has made all things to be in their time beautiful, that we may prize and cherish every opportunity for seeing him. He sets before our eyes his glory, and we know him. Also, he has put eternity within our hearts, so that we may understand how things should be, although we cannot know except in part as God knows. Therefore, I suppose there is nothing better than for a man to start and finish life rejoicing, taking care of others, and enjoying life and all of its pleasures, all God's gifts that everywhere abound to us. Whatever God does shall endure forever. Nothing can be added to it, nothing taken, great or small.